You walk into a room and nobody looks up. You speak and your words seem to dissolve into the air before they reach anyone's ears. You sit at the edge of the group, close enough to be part of it, but far enough that you could disappear and nobody would notice. And you tell yourself it's fine. You tell yourself you prefer it this way, that you're just introverted, that you don't need people anyway. But late at night, when you're lying in bed scrolling through photos of gatherings you weren't invited to, parties that happened without you, groups that formed and thrived while you were nowhere in, their thoughts, you feel it, that hollow ache, that understanding that somewhere along the line, without you even realizing it, your position in the social hierarchy shifted. You became optional, forgettable, invisible. And the worst part? You don't even know when it happened. Was it that time you said no to an invitation because you were tired? Was it when you stopped reaching out first because you were testing who actually cared? Was it the moment you decided to focus on yourself and your goals, thinking people would still be there when you came back? But they weren't. They moved on. The group chats continued without you. The plans were made, the bonds were formed, and you were left standing outside a circle that no longer had space for you. If you know this feeling, if you've watched yourself become irrelevant in social spaces that once felt like home, if you felt the sting of realizing you don't matter to people you thought were your friends, then pay attention. Because what I'm about to tell you will completely change how you understand social hierarchy and your place within it. Here's the truth that nobody wants to say out loud. In the animal kingdom, in wolf packs, in primate tribes, in every social species that has ever existed, there is one universal law. The lone wolf dies. The isolated monkey gets picked off by predators. The rejected member of the herd doesn't survive the winter. Social isolation isn't just uncomfortable, it's dangerous. And your brain knows this. Your DNA remembers a time when being cast out from the tribe meant death. So when you find yourself alone, when you realize you're slipping down the social hierarchy, your nervous system doesn't just register it as loneliness, it registers it as a threat to your survival. This is why loneliness hurts physically. This is why rejection activates the same neural pathways as physical pain. Your body is screaming at you that something is wrong, that you're in danger, that you need to fix this before it's too late. But here's what most people don't understand about social hierarchies. They're not static. They're fluid, constantly shifting, constantly being renegotiated through thousands of micro-interactions. Every conversation is a test. Every group gathering is an opportunity for someone to rise and someone to fall. And when you're absent, when you remove yourself from these interactions, the hierarchy doesn't pause and wait for you. It continues, and your position, your rank, it gets redistributed to those who are present. Let me paint you a picture of how this actually happens. There's a group, let's say 5 people who used to hang out regularly. You're one of them. But life gets busy. You start declining invitations. Once, twice, 3 times, you have good reasons. Work is demanding, you're tired, you need alone time. All valid, all reasonable. But here's what's happening that you don't see. The other 4, they still meet. And without you there, the dynamic shifts. Someone has to fill the space you left. Maybe it's the quiet one who suddenly becomes more talkative. Maybe it's someone new who gets invited to fill the gap. And with each gathering you miss, the bonds between them strengthen while your connection weakens. They create inside jokes you don't understand. They share experiences you weren't part of. They develop a rhythm that doesn't include you. And then one day you decide you're ready to reconnect. You reach out. You suggest hanging out. And you notice something has changed. The responses are polite but distant. The enthusiasm isn't there. They're busy. They already have plans. And when you do finally meet up, you feel it immediately. You're not quite an outsider, but you're not quite an insider either. You're a guest in a space where you used to belong. Your rank has dropped. And the terrifying thing is, you can feel it, but you can't quite name it. Now, before we go deeper, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be completely honest with yourself. How many times have you isolated yourself thinking it was a power move, thinking that stepping back would make people miss you, would make them realize your value, only to discover that they just moved on without you. How many times have you watched from the outside as the group you used to be part of thrived without you, posted photos, made memories, built connections, while you told yourself you didn't care? You were better off alone. If this has happened to you, if you felt that painful realization that your absence didn't create the longing you expected, but instead created your replacement, I want you to leave a comment right now. Just write, "I became optional." That's it. 3 words. I became optional. Because when you admit this, when you put it into words, something shifts. You stop lying to yourself about why you're alone. And more importantly, you'll see dozens, maybe hundreds of other people writing the exact same thing. And suddenly you'll understand that this isn't a personal failure. This is a pattern. This is how social hierarchies work. They're ruthless. They're efficient. They don't wait for you. And the moment you understand this mechanism, you can start working with it instead of against it. So go ahead, write in the comments, "I became optional," and let that be the moment you stop pretending isolation is a choice when really, it's become your prison. Now let's talk about what's actually happening on a deeper level when you isolate yourself. Social hierarchies operate on a principle that's older than civilization itself. Visibility equals value. In ancient tribes, the members who were seen, who contributed to hunts, who participated in gatherings, who showed up when the tribe needed them, these were the members who had status. The ones who disappeared, even for good reasons, they became uncertain variables. Are they reliable? Are they loyal? Are they weak? Are they a threat? Uncertainty in social groups gets resolved in one direction: down. When people don't know where you stand because you're not around, they assume you stand lower than them. This is not conscious. This is not malicious. This is automatic social calibration. Your absence creates a vacuum of information, and that vacuum gets filled with assumptions, and those assumptions are rarely favorable. Here's the mechanism. Humans are tribal creatures with limited social bandwidth. We can only maintain meaningful relationships with about 150 people. That's Dunbar's number. But realistically, our close circle is much smaller, maybe 5 to 15, people who we actually invest time and energy into. When you remove yourself from that circle, you create an opening, and nature abhors a vacuum. Someone else will fill that spot. Not because people are disloyal, but because humans need connection, and if you're not providing it, they'll find someone who will. Think about this in terms of basic economics. Attention is currency in social hierarchies. Every interaction is an investment. Every conversation, every shared experience, every moment of presence, it's depositing value into your social account. When you're consistently absent, you're not making deposits. And relationships, like bank accounts, they don't stay neutral when you stop contributing. They drain, they atrophy, they close. The people in your life, they don't sit around waiting for you to come back. They have their own needs for connection, validation, belonging. And if you're not meeting those needs, someone else will. This is not betrayal. This is survival. This is how humans have operated for 200,000 years. The tribe takes care of those who take care of the tribe. And if you're not part of the tribe's daily life, you're not part of the tribe. You're a memory, a former member, someone they used to know. Let me give you a concrete example of how devastating this can be. There's a man, let's call him Michael. Smart guy, successful career, lots of acquaintances but few deep friendships. Michael decides he's tired of surface-level relationships. He wants to focus on himself, build his business, work on his goals. Noble pursuit. So he starts declining social invitations. He stops initiating hangouts. He goes into what he calls his hermit mode. 6 months pass. Michael builds his business. He hits his financial goals. He's proud of what he's accomplished. Now he's ready to reconnect. He reaches out to his old friend group. The first sign something's wrong. His messages sit on read for hours before getting brief, cordial responses. When he finally arranges a meetup, he shows up excited to share his journey. But the conversation doesn't flow like it used to. There are new inside jokes he doesn't get, references to events he wasn't at. And worse, when he tries to share his achievements, he can feel their eyes glazing over. They're polite, but they're not invested, because while he was building his empire alone, they were building bonds with each other. They shared struggles, celebrated wins, supported each other through breakups and job changes and family drama. They created history together. And Michael? He has accomplishments, but he doesn't have shared history with them anymore. He thought he was rising in hierarchy by focusing on success. But he actually dropped in their eyes because success without connection is just isolation with better furniture. Here's the brutal truth about social hierarchy that most self-help content won't tell you. It's not enough to be accomplished. It's not enough to be interesting or successful or even kind. You have to be present. You have to be consistent. You have to show up even when you don't feel like it. Because social rank isn't determined by your objective value. It's determined by your perceived investment in the group. The person who shows up to every gathering, even the boring ones, even the inconvenient ones, that person rises. Not because they're the most interesting, but because they're reliable. They're invested. They're part of the fabric of the group. And the person who only shows up when it's convenient, when they need something, when they finally feel like socializing, that person drops. Every single time. No exceptions. This is the law of social physics. Presence compounds, absence compounds. And once you've been absent long enough, coming back doesn't reset your position. You have to earn it again from scratch. And often there's no longer a place for you to earn it back into. Now I know what some of you are thinking. This sounds exhausting. This sounds like fake. This sounds like I have to perform and pretend and force myself into social situations I don't enjoy, just to maintain some arbitrary position in a hierarchy I don't even care about. And you're right to feel that resistance, because here's the paradox. You can't maintain authentic social rank through inauthentic effort. If you're showing up to things you hate, spending time with people who drain you, forcing yourself to be social when everything in you wants solitude, you will fail. People can smell inauthenticity from a mile away. They can tell when you're there in body, but not in spirit. And that kind of presence actually lowers your rank faster than absence would. So what's the solution? How do you maintain your position in social hierarchies without sacrificing your need for solitude, your authenticity, your peace? The answer is strategic presence, not constant presence. Strategic presence. This means you don't say yes to everything, but when you do say yes, you're fully there. When you show up, you contribute, you engage. You make your presence felt and valued. It means you don't disappear completely, even during your hermit phases. You send a message. You make a quick call. You find low-effort ways to stay in the orbit of the people who matter. Because here's what most people don't understand. Maintaining social position doesn't require constant, high-intensity interaction. It requires consistent low-level contact. It's better to send a funny meme once a week than to go radio silent for 3 months and then expect a warm welcome back. Let me introduce you to a concept that will change how you think about this. The concept of social gravity. Every person in your life has a certain amount of social gravity. It's the pull they exert on you and others. High-status individuals have strong gravity. When they enter a room, the room orients toward them. When they speak, people listen. When they're absent, they're missed. Low-status individuals have weak gravity. They can be in the room and people don't notice. They can speak and get talked over. They can be absent and nobody comments. Now here's the key. Social gravity isn't built through grand gestures. It's built through accumulation. Every positive interaction adds a tiny bit of mass to your social gravity. Every time you make someone laugh, every time you offer genuine help, every time you show up when you said you would, you add mass. And over time, that mass becomes weight, becomes presence, becomes the kind of gravity that makes you unmissable. But here's the problem. When you isolate, you're not just stopping the accumulation, you're losing mass, because social gravity decays in absence. People forget the last funny thing you said. They forget how you made them feel. They forget why they valued you. And when enough mass is lost, your gravity collapses. You become a social black hole, not in the physics sense, but in the sense that you're invisible. You exert no pull, you don't affect the orbit of the group anymore. So the question becomes, how do you build and maintain social gravity without burning yourself out? First, you have to accept that you can't be high status in every social circle. You have to choose. This is the law of social investment. Your time and energy are finite. If you spread yourself too thin trying to maintain positions in 10 different groups, you'll drop in all of them. But if you focus on 2 or 3 groups that actually matter to you, you can build real gravity there. Second, you have to show up consistently to the moments that matter. Birthdays, celebrations, crisis moments. These are the high-stakes interactions where social bonds are either cemented or broken. Missing these sends a clear message. You're not invested. You're not reliable. You're not part of the inner circle. Third, you need to create value when you are present. Don't just show up and be a body in the room. Contribute. Make people glad you came. This doesn't mean being a performer or a people pleaser. It means being genuinely engaged. Asking questions, listening, offering perspectives, being the kind of presence that adds something to the gathering rather than just consuming from it. And fourth, and this is crucial, you need to manage your exits and absences strategically. When you need to pull back, when you need alone time, when life demands your focus elsewhere, you communicate it. You don't just ghost, you don't just stop showing up and hope people understand. You say, hey, I'm going through something right now, or I'm focusing on this project for the next month, or I need some solitude, but I'll check in soon. This does 2 things. It prevents people from filling the vacuum of your absence with negative assumptions, and it maintains a thread of connection even when you're not physically present. People respect clearly communicated boundaries way more than they respect mysterious disappearances. Now let's talk about what happens when you've already dropped in social rank, when you've already become optional, forgettable, when your gravity has collapsed. Can you recover? The honest answer is sometimes yes, sometimes no. It depends on how far you've fallen and how much the group has moved on without you. If you've been gone for a few weeks or even a couple months, recovery is absolutely possible. You come back with humility, not with demands. You don't walk in expecting your old position. You acknowledge the absence. You rebuild slowly. You show up consistently again. You re-earn trust. You reaccumulate social mass. But if you've been gone for a year, 2 years, if the group has fundamentally reformed without you, recovery might not be possible. And this is where you have to make a hard decision. Do you try to force your way back into a space that has moved on? Or do you accept the loss and build new connections elsewhere? There's no shame in the second option. Sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is release your grip on what was and turn your energy toward what could be. But here's something most people never consider. Sometimes your drop in social rank isn't a failure. Sometimes it's information. Sometimes you dropped because you outgrew that group, because your values changed, because the kind of connection they offer isn't the kind you need anymore, and you were holding on out of habit, out of fear of being alone, out of some belief that having a group, any group, is better than having none. But that's not always true. A low-quality connection that drains you is worse than solitude that restores you. Being in a group where you're low status and struggling to climb back up is worse than being alone and building yourself into someone who naturally attracts high-quality connections. This is the hard wisdom that comes from understanding social hierarchies. Sometimes the answer isn't to fight to maintain your rank. Sometimes the answer is to leave the game entirely and find a different game where your natural way of being is already high value. Let me tell you about a woman. Let's call her Sarah. Sarah was part of a tight-knit group of friends from college. For years, they were inseparable. But as they moved into their late 20s, Sarah noticed something. Every conversation was the same. Drama about the same topics. Complaints about the same things. No growth, no evolution. Just a circular loop of the same patterns. Sarah started feeling drained after hangouts instead of energized, but she kept showing up because these were her people, her tribe, her history. Then life threw her a curveball. She got a job, opportunity in another city. She had to move. And in that move, she naturally pulled back from the group. At first, it was painful. She felt the drop in rank. She felt herself becoming optional. But something interesting happened. As she built a new life in a new place, she started meeting different kinds of people. People who were curious, who read, who challenged her, who wanted to talk about ideas and possibilities instead of just gossip and complaints. And when she would visit her old city and meet up with her old group, the contrast was stark. She realized she had outgrown them. Not in a superior way, but in a compatibility way. The connection that once felt like home now felt like a cage, and the drop in social rank that she had feared and fought against was actually a gift. It was her subconscious pushing her towards something better, and she had been resisting it because she was afraid of being alone. This brings us to one of the deepest truths about social hierarchy and solitude. Sometimes being alone isn't a sign that you're dropping in rank. Sometimes it's a sign that you're transitioning between hierarchies. You're no longer a good fit for the old group, but you haven't yet found your new tribe. And this transition period, this in-between space, it feels like failure. It feels like rejection. It feels like you're becoming invisible. But it's actually metamorphosis. You're shedding an old skin. And yes, it's uncomfortable. Yes, it's lonely. Yes, it's scary. But on the other side of it, if you do the work, if you figure out who you actually are when you're not performing for the approval of people who don't really see you, you emerge as someone with stronger gravity, someone who doesn't need to fight for rank because their presence naturally commands it. So, here's your challenge for the next 7 days. I want you to do an honest audit of your social life. Write down every group you're part of, every friend you have, every social circle you're trying to maintain a position in. And for each one, ask yourself 3 questions. 1. Do I actually enjoy spending time with these people? Or am I here out of obligation or fear of being alone? 2. When I'm with this group, do I feel like I can be authentically myself, or am I performing a version of me that I think they'll accept? 3. Is my energy going up or down after interactions with these people? Be ruthlessly honest. And here's what I want you to do with that information. If you find groups where you're performing, where you're drained, where you're clinging to a rank that doesn't even feel good to hold, I want you to give yourself permission to let go. Not dramatically, not burning. Bridges, just gently releasing your grip. Stop forcing it, stop showing up out of obligation. Let yourself drift. See what happens. And if you find groups where you're energized, where you're authentic, where you're valued, double down there. Show up more, invest more, build your gravity there. Because the secret to social hierarchy isn't being high status everywhere. It's being deeply connected somewhere. It's having 1 or 2 or 3 spaces where you truly belong, where your presence matters, where you don't have to fight to be seen. That's worth more than being mid-rank in 10 different groups where you're just another face. And if you're in that transition space right now, if you're alone because you've outgrown your old connections but haven't found your new ones yet, I want you to hear this. You're not failing. You're not broken. You're not unlovable. You're just between chapters. And this chapter, the solitude chapter, it's not punishment, it's preparation. It's where you figure out who you are when nobody's watching. It's where you build the kind of internal gravity that doesn't need external validation. It's where you become the kind of person who doesn't chase belonging because belonging chases you. But you have to use this time wisely. You can't just sit in isolation and hope things change. You have to work on yourself. You have to read, think, grow, develop skills, build something, become interesting not for other people but for yourself. Because when you do that, when you become someone who's genuinely engaged with life, who has stories and perspectives and depth, you won't have to fight for social rank. People will feel your gravity and move toward you naturally.